cancer, stage 4. And here's the thing. He had switched earlier from medical insurance to Medishare, where Christians share each other's medical bills. So the question for Jordan and his wife Jenny was, is this actually going to work?
Our medical bills exceeded $160,000. Medishare members shared all our bills.
And it was about more than just the money, too. This is a real community.
Medishare is a family, a group of people that stick with you through the hardest times of your life. I just don't know how I could have done it without Medishare.
It's so worth looking into. There's a reason this is growing so fast. So if you want to find out more, here is a number for you, 855-51-BIBLE. That's 855-51-BIBLE.
According to a leading authority, when presented with a problem, 95% of Americans sit on their hands while only 5% do something about it.
I thought we'd get a couple of things on the way to the party.
Yeah, grab a shopping cart.
Oh, it's stuck. I guess we'll just have to carry everything.
Let me try. There, see?
Don't be part of the problem. Be part of the solution.
Boy, I'm thirsty. You want a soda?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, it didn't take my $1. Well, that's okay. I can wait.
Try it again, like this. Here you go.
If you have a friend that gives up too soon, you know what to do.
You know, I haven't seen Bob, and it didn't start. Maybe we should call Mother.
Hey, you give up too easy. Give her another try. Why don't we listen to Rush on the way?
Who's Rush?
A guy you really gotta get to know.
Listen to Rush on the EIB network. Let's face it, sometimes we get gifts we just can't use, or we just don't like.
Oh, a Chia Pet. Thanks.
Well, that's not a problem anymore, because now there's a Thanks Anyway store near you. At Thanks Anyway, we'll take that gift, repackage it, and give it back to you so you can give it to someone else.
I don't even need to shop for wedding gifts this year. With Thanks Anyway, I can do all my shopping right at home.
At Thanks Anyway, even monogram gifts are no problem. We can change them so no one will know the difference.
How sweet. You got us a set of dish towels, just like the ones we got you for your wedding.
KFC's new pickle fried chicken. A different KFC fried chicken experience. Straight from the States. Get a 9-piece family meal with 3 large sides and 4 biscuits. Or try our pickle crispy strips with 2 regular sides in a $5 box. Hurry to KFC today and try the new KFC pickle fried chicken. KFC, it's finger-licking good.
Introducing Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzky.
Hi, I'm Bob.
Purveyor of truth and justice.
Well, hold on. That's a bit over the top, isn't it? I just want to tell the Points International radio listening audience and Tall Tales buffs all over the world to take heart. I'm back. Tall Tales airs afternoons at 4 right here on The Point. Ray says, set your radio to 93.3 FM and forget it. You needn't touch it again.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
They're preparing for Michael. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. It was a fast developing storm. Now it's strengthening and headed for the Gulf Coast.
Hurricane Michael is a massive storm. that could bring total devastation to parts of our state, especially in the Panhandle.
That's Florida's Governor Rick Scott, who has declared a state of emergency in nearly 36 Florida counties. Alabama's Governor Kay Ivey issuing a similar declaration for her entire state. But where that storm will land, not entirely clear yet.
Some of these tracks, and this would be the eye of the storm, taking it over Pensacola. Other tracks taking the eye of the storm over Apalachicola, a little farther off towards the east. But by and large, the larger wind field there is going to affect a large area across the entire Panhandle.
Fox meteorologist Adam Klotz says Michael is likely to make landfall as a Category 3 storm sometime on Wednesday. A ceremony at the White House Monday night for newly confirmed Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh brought an apology from the man who nominated him.
To Brett and the entire Kavanaugh family for the terrible pain and suffering you have been forced to endure.
Justice Kavanaugh will hear his first oral arguments on Tuesday. A prayer vigil in New York State Monday night for the victims of the weekend limo crash while investigators continue to probe the cause.
NTSB Chairman Robert Sumwalt says there is a lot that must be looked at in this crash. Were seatbelts worn? Was the car roadworthy? And then there's the car's ability to stop.
Yeah, is there any evidence at all that the brakes were being applied? There's no apparent skid marks.
New York Governor Andrew Cuomo says the limo, a converted SUV, failed a state inspection and should have been off the road. He says he wants the operator shut down for the time being.
We're doing a cease and desist order to stop Prestige Limousine from operating until the investigation is concluded.
Alcohol and driver health are other factors being assessed.
Fox's Gernal Scott. This is Fox News.
We're surrounded by sound. There are sounds that you need to hear. There are sounds that you want to hear. And there are sounds that you long to hear.
I love you.
Hear it all, louder and clearer than ever before. If you or someone you know has a hard time hearing, Guam Hearing Doctors can help, using state-of-the-art test gear to evaluate your hearing and coming up with a plan to make your life better by making your hearing better. Call Guam Hearing Doctors for an appointment or visit them on the web at guamhearingdoctors.com.
Another social media network has been hacked by breachers, Google this time.
A Wall Street Journal article details a Google Plus software glitch which potentially gave developers access to private information of nearly 500,000 users between 2015 and March of this year. The report claims Google parent company Alphabet did not disclose the issue when it was first discovered to avoid damage to its reputation and regulation. In a blog post, Google says the bug potentially exposed data including users' names, birth dates, profile photos, and email addresses, but it cannot confirm which users were impacted and found no evidence any developer misused profile information.
Fox's Kristen Goodwin reports Google plans to shut down the consumer version of Google Plus because of low usage. A construction worker is dead, 5 co-workers hospitalized after a 3-story townhouse they were building in Dallas collapsed during a thunderstorm Monday. The National Weather Service reported wind gusts in excess of 60 miles an hour at the time. Postal workers and their supporters spent part of the Columbus Day holiday protesting what they see as a White House push to make the U.S. Postal Service a private entity, where the sun shines brightly on the plane. Apparently good for the marijuana business.
More than 7,300 people have applied to get a medical marijuana license in Oklahoma, with 600 applications for dispensaries. Medical marijuana became legal in the state earlier in the year, but officials are still working on licensing patients, growers, and dispensaries. If all of the applications were approved, the ratio of patients to dispensaries would be about 12 to 1. Commercial dispensary license applications cost $2,500, and the application process has already generated more than $5 million for the state. Rich Dennison, Fox News.
A mixed day on Wall Street. The Dow up 39. The Nasdaq lost 52. Dow futures are trading more than 40 points lower. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Family Finance, serving the people of Guam since 1959. Now you can start planning for the holidays by getting a personal Christmas loan from $1,000 up to $3,500. Family Finance has 3 convenient locations to serve you. Give them a call in Dededo, 633-4473, Hagåtña, 475-4545, and the Upper Tumon location on the 2nd floor of the Pacific Building at 647-5626. Get your Christmas loans today from Family Finance.
The Bob Klitsky Show is brought to you by Sanford Technology Group, STG, delivering service that can't be beat.
If you are looking to rent trucks, forklifts, or construction equipment, including Kohler generators, then contact Morico Equipment on Epow Road, 649-1946, or click moricoequipment.com. Box trucks, reefer trucks, freezer trucks, flatbed trucks, tractor trucks, water trucks, forklifts, excavators, backhoes, loaders, skid steers, bulldozers, compact rollers, telehandlers, boom lifts, scissor lifts, diesel generators, air compressors, light towers. moricoequipment.com.
Call the experts at Guam Hearing Doctors if you're worried about your hearing. The evaluation is simple and painless.
It's important to have claims process that works for you. At Guahan Insurance Services, we make things simple and convenient. Same door you walked in to purchase your insurance is the same door you open to file your claim. We can't pretend that the car insurance claims process is fun, but we can promise a hassle-free and speedy recovery without any runarounds. For your home, auto, and business insurance, visit us at the Camacho Landmark Center on Marine Corps Drive in Tamuning. Don't forget to like us on Facebook or give us a call at 475-1162 or text 929-SAVE. That's 929-7283.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitsky, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitsky.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Second Amendment, United States Constitution. This is the book that we rely on quite heavily here on Tall Tales. It's called the United States Constitution. Of course, we have a constitutional law research department back in the Tall Tales think tank that supplies me with all kinds of interesting research concerning the United States Constitution. And if you are a life member of Tall Tales, you will benefit from that tremendous bank of knowledge that I will from time to time make available right here on Tall Tales. I usually start out criticizing Nino, Mr. Justice Antonin Scalia, for his inability to read the word militia in the Second Amendment. And as I mentioned, I think yesterday, I have high hopes that the newest member of the United States Supreme Court, Brett Kavanaugh, will be a better reader than Mr. Justice Scalia was and will be able to read the word militia when he sees it. As a matter of some comfort, I suppose, for those of you who cherish Justice Scalia's interpretation of the Second Amendment, which for a lot of folks means that anybody can carry any gun he wants to, anywhere he wants to, as opposed to the actual holdings in McDonald and Heller, which hold that a person has an individual right to keep a weapon in his house as a matter of self-protection. I know that that's not the interpretation that what I would call the gunners out there in my international radio listening audience would prefer. And the gunners are a really important part of the international radio listening audience. That's why I try to have some sort of a firearms tidbit for them whenever I can find one. I don't have an exact tidbit today, but surveying some of the stuff that's come out since Judge Kavanaugh's confirmation to the Supreme Court, some of the anti-gun folks are really kind of worried. They're afraid that he is going to be a real Second Amendment booster, and if anything, rather than cut back on it, would probably extend the boundaries of the Second Amendment. So If that makes you happy, that's good. Happy listeners out there in our international radio listening audience is a source of joy for all of us here. For me, all of the people back there in the Tall Tales think tank, for the Real Joe Cruz, right, Real Joe Cruz?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Are you happy today, Real Joe Cruz?
Oh, I'm super happy today, sir. I've never been more happier.
Okay, I guess any time that we can do Tall Tales, we're going to be pretty happy about it, right?
You got it, sir.
Yeah, okay. So if you wanted to hear your voice on Tall Tales, the number is 888-8255. Easy way to remember it, 888-TALK, 888-8255. And, of course, we've got some Facebookers here already. We've got Brad and Prudencio Mano. And Brad says he's switching to YouTube. I guess I'll permit it, Brad, but we do appreciate your comments here on Facebook. You kind of spice things up a little bit. And Jesse Limtiaco, let's see, he's got a link. I probably won't have time to open the link, but Jesse Limtiaco says, that you with Senator Tenorio, roll back the GRT? And it's a link to Bob's office, Bob in the News, for March of 2004. Without actually clicking on the link, I suppose it is, because when the Democrats passed the increase of the GRT from 4% to 6%, the 6 Republicans in the minority mounted an offensive to roll back that GRT. And one of the things I did, I had a big cardboard sign that said, roll back the GRT. And I stationed myself down at Veterans Park, sometimes referred to as Sunset Park. It's the park along Agania Bay, just north of East Agania. And I was out there, and then all 5 of my colleagues joined me, and Chamber of Commerce got involved with one of those VIP, Voters Introduction Plan bills, etc. And to make a long story short, the Democrats did roll back the GRT. So I'm going to take a look at that link during the next blank, Jesse, and see what I think I know where it goes, but I want to make sure. And let's see, Ismael Velez. It's a little hard on our friend Brad there. No one likes a quitter, Brad. I don't think he's quitting, Ismael. I think he's just taking his viewership to another outlet. And Rico Blancafor, since the left is mostly anti-gun, can there be an amendment that bans registered Democrats from obtaining a firearms license? That sounds good to me, Rico. And let's see, who else have I got on here? I know that I think Juanita signed in, and I saw Carl Gutierrez. Carl was the first one to sign in today, so welcome on board, Carl. So without further ado, talking about gunners, we're going to go to the Daily News editorial as the first entry on Zemi Ikotny, which we also call Meet the Press here on Tall Tales. And I will give the Daily News a little credit before I even start with their editorial and say that the editorial is somewhat disarming. Where is that? Real Joe Cruz? That's the gavel. You know, the one that you play when there's a humorous play on words? Yeah, that one. So let's try this one again, okay, Real Joe Cruz? I'll say this, that the Daily News editorial is somewhat disarming. The title of the Daily News editorial is, Our View, Disarming Police Officers Should Be a Felony. You see what I mean, Real Joe Cruz? Yeah. The gun-grabbing incident involving Lieutenant Governor Ray Tenorio has led to a proposed piece of legislation that would make it a felony to disarm a law enforcement officer. The bill makes sense. While the case involving Tenorio is working its way through the court system, members of the public have debated whether Tenorio's actions were appropriate under the circumstances. I don't know if debate is the correct word yet. I've heard an awful lot of people taking it, and I have yet to hear anyone mount a spirited defense for the actions of our esteemed Lieutenant Governor. Tenorio, a former police officer himself, has apologized for grabbing the officer's gun during the 6th annual Pleasure Island barbecue block party in July. Of course, everybody and his brother refers to it as the Glock party. You don't need to do that little drum beat there for that one. That one's so used that it's hardly humorous anymore. At the time, he said he saw what he believed was an unsafe firearm in an officer's holster, so he grabbed the weapon and handed it to the officer. I thought I did what I needed to do to protect the public as well as the officer. It was for the right reason, but maybe done the wrong way, and I apologize for that, Tenorio said. I'm not above the law, he said. He is facing 2 counts of reckless conduct, obstructing government functions, and official misconduct, all as misdemeanors. But the vast majority of gun-grabbing incidents are not undertaken with the public's interest in mind. News reports from around the nation tell sad stories of suspects who have disarmed police officers with tragic results. Just weeks after the incident at the Glock party, a former Guam sailor who became an Arizona state trooper was shot and killed with a gun taken from a fellow officer. Bill 324, introduced by Senator Talina Nelson, would classify disarming a police officer as a felony of the 3rd degree, etc. So I'm going to go back to a rather rural witticism to describe Talina's action here. And it looks like what Talina has done is lock the barn door after the horse has escaped. What do you think, Real Joe Cruz?
Well, I'm with you, sir.
Yeah, good answer. Darn good answer. Yeah, I think she's locked up the barn door after the horse has escaped. I can't say that her idea is not a good idea, and I suppose it's timely, but I suspect that the chances that something like this would ever happen again, even in the absence of such a statute, probably wouldn't even rise to the level of slim and none. But anyhow, Daily News, you're on top of things today, and as I said before I even read the editorial, it was somewhat disarming. And we go from there to the Post, and the Post, I'm going to dump on the Post a little bit here. One Guam means helping foot the $160 million ORDOT dump cleanup costs. Military officials have used the slogan One Guam to underscore that the Department of Defense relationship with local government officials is harmonious, or that both sides aim for the good of the island. The phrase has especially been invoked by the military in trying to make a case that the Guam expansions, most notably the construction of the Marine Corps base not too far from Anderson and Dededo, will benefit the island's economy and security. They also mentioned One Guam in announcing water infrastructure upgrades that serve the island community in general. It's time to put One Guam to a new test. Department of Defense should ask the Department of Justice to stop blocking Guam's efforts to get reimbursed by the federal government for part of the $160 million cost to properly close and cap off the ORDOT dump. Makes a lot of sense. And what prompted this story, of course, is a story in the Daily News last Friday that the U.S. government, the Department of Justice, had made a motion to dismiss the suit brought by the government of Guam to recover the costs, at least some of the costs, for closing the Ordot dump from the U.S. government. And miracle of miracles, the motion to dismiss was denied. The motion was based, among other things, on the basis that it was untimely. It's an extremely complicated decision. It's 47 pages long, and much of it is built around the consent decree that the government of Guam entered into with the Department of Justice back in 2004, and what the consent decree did and did not preclude. So the judge, whose rather complicated name I can't remember, but the judge is an out-of-towner, ruled in Guam's favor that the suit could proceed. Now, it's not time to start buying a new cash register to put the cash in, because if Guam is to recover on the basis of the litigation, it's going to be a pretty long, hard fight. And there's at this point, there's no telling how it would come out, if we have a good chance to win or not. But so the the Post editorial makes a lot of sense, that instead of, there's an old saying amongst lawyers that a poor settlement oftentimes is better than a good lawsuit. So rather than burn up a lot of time and ill will, why not just pay the, as the old movie says, just pay the $2? It would be a nice gesture on the part of the United States government. It would bring about lots of goodwill, and it's very possibly the right thing to do, because in the papers filed with the motion to dismiss, there's no quibbling about whether or not the Navy dumped all kinds of noxious materials into that dump before and after World War II. So Tall Tales will not only give the Post the coveted, no disrespect to the Daily News today, Daily News did okay. So the as far as the Post is concerned, they not only received the coveted Blue Star, but today they are also going to get an E, because I not only award them the prize for the best editorial, but I endorse their idea. Now, have you ever seen that happen before, where Tall Tales actually endorsed an idea proposed by an editorial? Well, you watch Tall Tales long enough and you're liable to see or hear almost anything. That's kind of the beauty of Tall Tales. So let's see. I guess my friend Daryl Taggarty's already here, and Shelley says she's on YouTube also, but leave it to Shelley. She's considerate enough, even if she's on YouTube. She takes the time to come over here and Facebook to post and kind of exchange howdies or something like that. Daryl says, further to Rico's comment, the Commander-in-Chief of the U.S. Armed Forces, I don't know who that would be, has publicly declared the opposition to Justice Kavanaugh to be an angry mob. Can we be shot for speaking out? I think the answer to that is probably who is going to do the shooting and what we're going to be saying there, Daryl. I know what you're saying. I don't know who the Commander-in-Chief of the United States Armed Forces is, unless you're referring to President Donald Trump, I guess, right? Anyhow, I get your drift, Daryl. Good comment. And Jesse Limtiaco, not just the Ordot dump, but there's our Superfund sites in other areas of Guam. Cocos Island, Cocos Lagoon is also contaminated with PCB. Now, you younger folks wouldn't remember this, but there was a time when Cocos Island was pretty much wilderness. Folks who lived in Molessu probably went over there and went crabbing and stuff. But on the end of Cocos Island, there was a Coast Guard station. And on that the purpose of the Coast Guard station was it was a LORAN station. LORAN means long-range navigation, long-range aids to navigation. It's technology that's been replaced by something much more modern. But there had been a Coast Guard station there, and I suppose that the Coast Guard station, the LORAN station, had polychlorobiphenyls, PCB. I can't remember quite how that goes. So no doubt that's possible. But there's no suit pending right now, Jesse, concerning that matter, and there is a suit pending concerning the ORDOT dump. So in the world of politics, the old saying is timing is everything. So the timing to ask for the U.S. to pony up on the ORDOT dump, there'd never be a better time than right now when it could be done as a settlement of a lawsuit. And Lynn and Vince Bora, you're a little bit late, but it's all right. You are regular members of Tall Tales, so you have an excused absence. And let's see, I think some others got it snuck in here too that I didn't notice. Sonny Cruz is here. Jesse Limtiaco, guess times and mentalities have changed for both parties regarding tax increases to fund the government of Guam. I wonder who he means by both parties. If you're referring back to the Bob's office thing, I think Ray Tenorio, by derivations, ideas about tax increases has changed since his administration made almost a career out of trying to raise taxes. My position has not changed. I never saw a tax increase that I liked, and probably won't change much from that particular position. And Carl Nelson is here. So okay, I guess we've got a quorum. So we've done our deal with Zemi Ikotny, awarded the Blue Star to the Post, endorsed the Post proposal, and now we shift to the card. We've got some interesting things on the card. The first item on the card is the Chamorro Land Trust Commission versus Saturday Night Live. So the test here, I think, is going to be to see which one is actually funnier. What the Chamorro Land Trust Commission does when it gets its hand caught in the cookie jar, or whether Saturday Night Live, which is a weekly comedy show, which one provokes more laughter. And we've got Tenorio and Leon Guerrero versus unborn children, DFS versus Lotte, and finally, Real Joe Cruz, Chamorro versus Chamorro. I've got a couple items down the card here that I might get to, but we'll hang on to that until we see how it goes with the ones I mentioned. So the Real Joe is playing Dave Brubeck's Take 5, so we got to take a short break here.
John Gibson, Digging Up History, the military breakthrough that helped the British beat Napoleon at Waterloo, and the inventor whose name lives on even today. That after this. Let's talk heirloom sheets and towels from Redland Cotton in Alabama. First, the family farm, growing the finest cotton in the world. The spinning, the looming, every step made in America, right down to the cutting and sewing. Sheets designed from a long-lost 1920s weave. The softest, most comfortable, longest-lasting sheets you've ever slept on. The Redland family, dedicated to America and linens you'll treasure. Check out redlandcotton.com for America's linen. redlandcotton.com. A British officer had an idea for a breakthrough military weapon. He spent his life working on it and his life savings perfecting it. It was an artillery shell that was packed with smaller musket balls. It could be fired over a great distance. It was first used against French troops, and when it exploded over massed French troops, it spread hot metal shards over a wide area. The shell proved to be extremely deadly, but also so frightening, French troops huddled in terror when they heard it whistling their way. The commander of the British artillery gave the new invention a major part of the credit for defeating Napoleon at Waterloo, and the inventor's name lives on to this very day. His name? Henry Shrapnel. I'm John Gibson, digging up history.
Taste the sizzle at Chili's with our new fajita flavors. Our signature fajitas are served with sliced bell peppers, caramelized onions, topped with chipotle garlic butter, and chopped cilantro. Build your fajita with over 16 ounces of tender grilled chicken, juicy steak, and a dozen pieces of seasoned grilled shrimp in the family fajita trio. All served with warm flour tortillas and fresh toppings like mixed cheese, guacamole, salsa, and pico de gallo. Experience bold, sizzling fajita flavors only at Chili's. More life happens here.
And now, back to Tall Tales with Bob Klitsky, the one radio show politicians don't want you to listen to. Call now, 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
So here we are, back again, picking up the card, starting out with the Chamorro Land Trust Act and the Chamorro Land Trust Commission. And I may invent a new award and make the first award to the Chamorro Land Trust Commission. So you're going to have to hang on to see what that's all about. But this is a story that appeared in the Post today. The headline, CLTC, Director Committed No Wrongdoing. Now, it's too bad we don't have a live audience in here, because since we don't, we got to use the laugh track on that one, Real Joe Cruz. Let me try it again. CLTC, Director Committed No Wrongdoing. The Chamorro Land Trust Commission said there was no wrongdoing on the Department of Land Management Director Michael Bora or staff members and their families in relation to the controversial leases in Barragata Heights. Now, I want to go back and read something about read something from the testimony that I've kvetched about more than once here on this program concerning the testimony that I was never able to submit because of a trick that Tom Atta pulled. And the testimony starts out like this. It's a testimony in favor of Bill 284, and that was the bill that would have appointed the governor would have appointed a retired judge to go in and straighten out this mess, to promulgate rules and regulations, etc. This crucial remedial legislation should have been passed in May. On April 19, Mount Barragata residents reported drainage concerns caused by a newly bulldozed road leading from Route 16 into the boonies. The road led not only into the boonies, but ran smack dab into a Pandora's box of untrustworthiness, incompetence, legal, ethical, and moral problems involving, among others, DLM Director and Deputy Director Michael Bora and David Camacho, Chamorro Land Trust Commission Chair Pika Farron, Senator Regina Lee, and employees of the CLTC, one of whom confessed on camera to a violation of 4 GCA 15204. So that's kind of how I started out my testimony. And there's another key phrase here that I wanted to, that I never seem able to find. Yeah, well, what I said was that only the most naive amongst us would proceed on the basis that the people who created the mess, benefited from the mess, would tend to lose out if the causes of the mess were uncovered. Only the most naive would think that those would be the people to go in there and straighten out the mess. And that's exactly what the CLTC has certainly proved me right on that contention, because the CLTC has come out and said Mike Bora has done nothing wrong. Now, I read some old news stories yesterday, and I'm going to go back over some of it again because it's so on point. Starting out with KUAM on April 30, controversy circuit continues to circle the Chamorro Land Trust Act as word comes down that the Attorney General will conduct a review of leases awarded at the CLTC's Prime Barragata Heights property. Prime is right. One of those lots was appraised at $700,000. And as Darrell Taggarty pointed out yesterday, you know, the genius of the Chamorro Land Trust Act, if I'm using that word appropriately, is that some of the property was to be sold, and the money from the sale was to provide infrastructure, surveying and infrastructure for the lots that were lacking infrastructure. So one of those Barragata Heights is $700,000. One is $400,000. Think of in terms of doing what happened. Think in terms of selling that property and building roads to the Chamorro Land Trust properties that don't have roads, that aren't on Barragata Heights. The next sentence of this story says, even Governor Eddie Calvo is getting in on the action, calling for CLTC Chairwoman Pika Ferran to revoke leases that deviated from procedure. Even the governor. The governor, I think you need to take stronger action there, because I don't think Pika Ferran, in fact, Pika Ferran is not only not paying attention to you in light of what you said, she's kind of showing you a part of her hand that is somewhat disrespectful. At the CLTC meeting, board chair Pika Ferran saying land management employees involved in getting CLTC licenses should have the process put before the board for transparency. Now, I saw her say that on television, and then another story, it's pointed out that never happened. Guam Land Management Administrator, as you were CLTC Land Management Administrator Margarita Bora, whose daughter and first cousin got lots in Barragata Heights, saying they've tried to call applicants, but in her words, 80% of CLTC applicant contact information is not updated. But she had no trouble getting a hold of her sister, who was living off-island. Bora facilitating a switch in line, her sister, a 1995 applicant, switching places with her daughter, Mariah, a 2016 applicant. And this is what Bora said. My sister, she's relocated off-island. She's not looking at coming back anytime soon. So she just said, hey, what if I do come back? How can I still get some property? That's why they switched date and times. My daughter is ready to go and build her home and stuff today. And she's unable to with a 2016 application. With a 1995 application, my sister decided to switch application dates so that my daughter's able to build her home. Now, I saw this on television. I'll never forget it. And most of you probably saw it on television also. The Chamorro Land Trust Commission said there was no wrongdoing on the part of Michael Bora or staff members. So this is how it looks to me. This lady Land Management, CLTC Land Management Administrator Margarita Bora is familiar with how the system works. She can go into the files. She can see what land is available, where it is, how nice it is, et cetera, et cetera. And so she finds a really nice piece of property that you wouldn't be able to find because you aren't that familiar. You aren't familiar with the Chamorro Land Trust mechanism. And notice I didn't say the law because they never followed the law. They freely admitted that they never followed the law. It was just administrative practice. So this lady, Margarita Bora, knows exactly how it all works, knows where the good land is, knows how to switch names on applications. So she gets a hold of her sister, and her sister allows Margarita's daughter to take over her place. The sister was in line in 1995, the daughter in 2016. Now, here's the story. The Chamorro Land Trust Commission said there was no wrongdoing on the part of Land Management Director Michael Bora or staff members and their families in relation to the controversial leases in Barragata Heights. The statement was in the first of several anticipated press releases looking to chronicle issues and initiatives at the Commission. Media attention around the CLTC began with Barragata Heights leases, some of which were issued to certain government officials or their relatives. And I went through the whole litany yesterday of how many relatives were able to take advantage of this situation, including Michael Bora's sister himself. And Michael had the distinction of signing a lease twice, once as the director and once as the grantee, once as the lessor and once as the lessee. And while I'm at it here, and one of the releases, it showed that Michael signed like 40 leases here just recently. And it shows that he, not only Michael Bora, but David Camacho, the deputy director of land management, who has nothing to do with the CLTC, was signing leases. And Elizabeth Barrett Anderson said that leases must be approved by the Commission. So is it too much to ask the director of an agency, the purpose of which is leasing real property, is it too much to ask that he knows who is supposed to sign the leases? I don't think that's too much to ask. One would think that when a person took over an agency, the first thing he would do would be to go online and find the organic act, or the organic statute for that agency. Look in Title 21 and you'll find Chapter 75. That's the Chamorro Land Trust Act. It's not hard reading. It's not full of obscure Latin terminology or something like that. But one would think that the director would have made himself familiar with that. So being completely incompetent, I suppose, is not exactly wrongdoing. That takes me back to I think it's Hanlon's razor. Never, let me see if I can find that real quick here. Yeah, Hanlon's razor. Never attribute malice to that which is adequately explained by stupidity. So I guess being really stupid is not necessarily wrongdoing. It's not exactly what we're looking for as far as directors who have the ability to award leases for land that's worth $700,000. And then the rest of the story talks about clearing, or much of the story talks about clearing that road. And, you know, he really didn't do anything wrong. He just kind of took advantage of a situation. The story goes on to say, in addition, news stories noted 2 leases were issued to those the press considered well-connected to people in the government. Leases in each case were derived from a 1995 application. Derived from a 1995 application. The key word there is derived. And then the commission, this is a statement from the commission. Now, I don't know how this statement came out. I don't know if it's Bora speaking for the commission, or Pika Feharan, or David Camacho, or... Quote, we conducted an investigation into these leases along with a review of the entire CLTC program and policies. At the conclusion of the investigation, the commission could find no wrongdoing by the director, staff members, their family members, or those well-connected individuals who have the leases. Could find no wrongdoing whatsoever. I wonder what these guys would ever do if they misplaced their car keys. They'd be lifelong pedestrians after that if they could find no wrongdoing. Now, but there is an excuse here, because they were following the policies in place at the time. Now, the policies we now know are wrong, because we know that the commission was supposed to be signing the leases, not the director of land management, not the deputy director of land management, not the custodian who cleans the director's office, the commission itself. The commission has expanded its review to cover all CLTC leases and is in the process of submitting suggested changes in law to the legislature. Talk about a frightening thought. I would rather have the election commission submit changes to the law. The staff at the election commission, who turned out to be the mathematical wizards as to how many votes, how much of a disparity you needed for a recount. And then it has also asked the legislature to confirm its ratification of voidable leases and to ratify through legislative action leases considered null and void. Well, they're not considered null and void. They are null and void. And we know that because the chief legal officer of the government of Guam, Elizabeth Anderson, has said that they are null and void. So you want to go, now the Land Trust Commission wants to confirm them and, reward people like Margarita Bora, who confessed on television to what anyone would think is at least what in another part of the market would be insider trading. She used her ability, used her knowledge, and did something that the Attorney General results in only a nullity, that is switching places, so that her daughter could get a piece of property. So I think I've made my point here. We spent a lot of time on this yesterday, and oh yeah, I finally found that part of my letter that I wanted to read. So I'll read that after the break, just to make sure. And then I'm going to describe the new award that Tall Tales will be awarding, and I will make the first award right after this break.
Guam Regional Medical City. We bring the healthcare advances of the world directly to you. We are an acute care hospital that complements your needs with our robust outpatient specialty clinics. From preventative care to critical care, we strive for consistent excellence at GRMC. Our core philosophy is where patients are partners, which means we work as a team to make a healthier version of you. For more information about GRMC, visit us at grmc.gu.
Okay, so here we are. I'm back again, and I found that pithy quote from the testimony that I wanted to give on July 13, but I told you about the dirty trick that Tom Atta used to see to it that Bill 285 never went forward. Had it gone forward, I would have had to find something else to talk about on the first hour of Tall Tales here today, because that problem would have been solved. Now, instead of solving the problem, what we're going to do is reward the miscreants. Before I get into that, I want to read this quote. Only the most naive amongst us would proceed on the basis that the same people who created, abated, benefited from, or ignored the scandal can be trusted to bring it to an end. I ought to have that. I probably should paste that on Facebook, memorable words, because I put this testimony together on July 13, and that's exactly what happened. Tom Atta canceled the hearing, so I was never able to present the testimony. He never rescheduled it. I read a quote yesterday where an exchange between Frank Uggan and Tom Atta, where Frank Uggan, who discovered this whole mess back in April and introduced Bill 285, which would have fixed it, in the very beginning asked Tom Atta to hold an oversight hearing. And Frank Uggan said it's an urgent matter. And Tom Atta's retort was, urgent because this is an election year? And, of course, where is Tom Atta in this election year? Tom Atta's not running for re-election, so I guess he's okay, right? Well, no. Tom Atta is the co-chairman of Lou's campaign. So in politics, when you're talking about governor, is a zero-sum game. There can only be one governor. When you're talking about the Democrat nomination, there can only be one nominee. So if you are backing Lou, that which helps Frank hurts Lou. So the idea is, at least this is my analysis, is that don't let Frank do anything that might get him some earned media because the public thinks he's doing something correctly. Just stonewall it, cancel the committee hearing, don't reschedule it, and let this thing molder on to the disadvantage of everybody connected except the insiders who really benefited from it. Pity the poor folks who've been waiting around since 1995 wondering, am I ever going to get a piece of property? Or those people who did get property and had to spend their own money building a road to it. It's just a horror story. And now the horror is magnified by the Chamorro Land Trust Commission's willingness to just let it just let it all go and reward the miscreants. So the new award that I'm creating today is called the Ovita Nauta Award. Ovita Nauta. Now, you probably remember Ovita Nauta. Ovita is the employee of the police department who, while she was working at the police department, stole money from the police department, was indicted and prosecuted, and ultimately pled guilty. After she stole the money, she transferred from police to corrections, and the indictment came after she was at corrections. So the facts underlying the indictment would have been enough to fire her for that. I went through that yesterday. And failing that, when she was convicted of a crime, when she pled guilty, she could have been fired. Was she fired? No. She was lionized. She was made into a heroine by the director of corrections, Tony LaMorena, who said, well, you know, she did that at another agency. She didn't do it here. And she won the MAG Pro Award for customer service, and she's done a fantastic job here. So these are my words, not Tony's, but, you know, she's one of the heroines of the Department of Corrections. So rather than do anything that looks like discipline, we're going to reward her and we're going to praise her to the high heavens. That's the Ovita Nauta Award. Can we have a snazzy sound effect for the Ovita Nauta Award, Real Joe Cruz? That'll work. That'll work. Very good. Yeah. You know, I'll bet you Bo Snerdley is, every time he does a Rush Limbaugh show, saying, you know, I could hang it up anytime because my replacement is ready to go. His name is the Real Joe Cruz. He's the producer for Tall Tales out in Guam. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to award the Ovita Nauta Award. It's a multiple award. The first award goes to, have you got a drum roll there, Real Joe? The first award of the Ovita Nauta Award goes to Mike Bora. Okay, let's hear that musical strain for the award, too. Yeah. Very good. Very good, yeah. All right. Mike couldn't have done it all by himself. You know, it appeared to be a team effort. And one of the members of the team that really distinguished herself was Margarita Borja. So the second award goes to Margarita Borja. Very good. Very good. And lest you be deluded into thinking that everyone who gets this award is named Bora, although it probably could be, I think we should share some credit with the Chamorro Land Trust Commission. So the third award of the Ovita Nauta Award, who I suppose it is a multi-member board, but Pika Fairan seems to be the only one of prominence who I think in the absence of anything else, there was no motion, no report of any parliamentary activity. So the only supposition is that if the board speaks, it must be the chairman who's making these claims that the Chamorro Land Trust Commission said there was no wrongdoing on the part of Department of Land Management Director Michael Bora or staff members and their families. So the third Ovita Nauta Award, the coveted Ovita Nauta Award, goes to CLTC Chairperson Pika Fairan. And let's hear, yeah. So I suppose we could get the creative writers back in the Tall Tales think tank to do a TV script, and we could do our own version of Saturday Night Live here on the Chamorro Land Trust Commission. Michael Bora, some of the folks that have so far distinguished themselves, perhaps, if it weren't so tragic, being funnier than professional comedians. So, let's see, it's just about time for that big halftime show here on Tall Tales. So I think I'll start, although it's not next on the card, I'm going to start DFS versus Lotte. And there's a story in today's Post quoting a certain... Yeah, I should have waited. Okay, I'm going to come back after the big halftime show, and I'm going to start right out with Ray and Lou versus unborn children. That'll be the first item on the card.
point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
He says it's all behind him now. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News.
I take this office with gratitude and no bitterness.
Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh at a ceremonial swearing-in ceremony at the White House last night.
The Senate confirmation process was contentious and emotional. That process is over. My focus now is to be the best justice I can be.
And that job begins this morning. Justice Kavanaugh will be on the bench for oral arguments today. President Trump offering an apology to Justice Kavanaugh and his family over the confirmation process. The National Hurricane Center says they believe Michael will reach Category 3 strength before it makes landfall late Wednesday, likely along Florida's Panhandle or Big Bend area. Residents along the coast preparing.
I've always managed to stay in my home for the whole season, every year. This is the first year I come out to get sandbags.
Florida's Governor Rick Scott is urging residents to evacuate from low-lying coastal areas, saying you can't hide from a storm surge. The military making preparations as well.
All 55 F-22 stealth fighter jets from Tyndall Air Force Base on the Florida Panhandle have departed the area. Each jet valued at roughly $150 million. The U.S. Navy is also moving its training aircraft from Pensacola, Florida, according to a Navy spokesman.
Fox's Lucas Tomlinson reports the Pensacola-based Blue Angels flight demonstration team is already out of the storm's way, out west for an air show.
We've known less days to me.
More than 1,000 people turned out in Amsterdam, New York last night, a vigil for the 20 victims of Saturday's tragic limousine crash. The National Transportation Safety Board examining that limousine, which Governor Andrew Cuomo says failed a state safety inspection just a month ago. The owner of the limo company was an FBI informant following the terror attacks of September 11, 2001. This is Fox News.
Hey, what's that?
Oh, it's a Subway Big Hot Pastrami.
My Big Hot Pastrami?
No, back up. My Subway Big Hot Pastrami. Get your own.
Get your own Subway Big Hot Pastrami. Tender, juicy beef on freshly baked bread. Enjoy yours with mustard and pickles. Get a Big Hot Pastrami at your favorite Subway location. It's so good you won't want to share. For a limited time only. Subway. Make it what you want.
For over 30 years, Sanford Technology Group has been helping companies throughout Guam and Micronesia with their payroll, time and attendance, networking, and other information technology services. Our online integrated payroll and time and attendance solution provides the workforce management tools and expertise to make your business more efficient and employee-friendly. For more information, visit Sanford Technology at 335 South Marine Corps Drive or call us at 647-0220 to schedule a demo today.
Or midnight, we're there.
Fox News Channel. Real news, real honest opinion.
28 days now until the midterm elections. President Trump back on the campaign trail.
The president heads to Council Bluffs for a rally at the Mid-America Center this evening, stumping for Republican Governor Kim Reynolds and Congressman David Young. He's also expected to keep a promise to Iowa corn growers.
I hope President Trump sees this through and continues with promoting E15. Ethanol is great for the country and for family farms.
Growth Energy is behind that ad. E15 gas blend is currently banned in the summer. It's expected the president will announce an E15 year-round approval, something the Trump administration has previously said it supported. In the Midwest Bureau, Jeff Manasso, Fox News.
The president spent time Monday with Deputy U.S. Attorney General Rod Rosenstein and says he has no plans to fire him over published reports last month that Rosenstein offered to secretly record conversations with the president and try to have him removed from office, claims that Rosenstein has denied. One for the record books in the American League playoffs last night.
The Boston Red Sox bring the bats in Game 3 of the ALDS.
That ball's ripped down the right field line. That is a fair ball home run, and the cycle for Brock Holt.
Call courtesy of TBS. Brock Holt with a two-run shot there in the ninth inning. Holt becoming the first player in MLB history to hit for the cycle, a home run, triple, double, and single in a postseason game as the Red Sox romp the New York Yankees 16-1. Sox now have a 2-1 series lead in the ALDS with a chance to clinch a series win Tuesday in Game 4. Matt Napolitano, Fox News.
Earlier, the Astros pushed the Indians into the offseason with an 11-3 win in Game 3 of that ALDS NLDS. That loss also means retirement for the Indians' mascot. Chief Wahoo will be removed from the Cleveland uniforms next year. A 6-2 win over the Braves puts the Dodgers in the National League Championship Series against the Milwaukee Brewers. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Family Finance, serving the people of Guam since 1959. Now you can start planning for the holidays by getting a personal Christmas loan from $1,000 up to $3,500. Family Finance has 3 convenient locations to serve you. Give them a call in Dededo, 633-4473, Hagåtña, 475-4545, and the Upper Tumon location on the 2nd floor of the Pacific Building at 647-5626. Get your Christmas loans today from Family Finance.
The Bob Klitzy Show is brought to you by Sanford Technology Group, STG, delivering service that can't be beat.
Taste the sizzle at Chili's with our new fajita flavors. Our signature fajitas are served with sliced bell peppers, caramelized onions, topped with chipotle garlic butter, and chopped cilantro. Build your fajita with over 16 ounces of tender grilled chicken, juicy steak, and a dozen pieces of seasoned grilled shrimp in the family fajita trio. All served with warm flour tortillas and fresh toppings like mixed cheese, guacamole, salsa, and pico de gallo. Experience bold, sizzling fajita flavors only at Chili's. More life happens here.
Life is too short to be isolated from the people you love. Hearing loss is the invisible disability. The experts at Guam Hearing Doctors have solutions.
Are high power bills sending your budget into chaos? Take control with the help of Micronesia Renewable Energy. Using the highest quality panels, a solar energy system from MRE will guarantee to save you money on power. With MRE, Christmas comes early. With every solar energy system, homeowners not only get $400 for signing up, but also an entry for a chance to win $1,000 in cold, hard cash, just in time for Christmas. It pays to be an MRE customer. Conditions apply. Call 632-2613 for details. MRE, the smarter choice.
So here we are back again, and remember the phone number 888-8255. And Tedo, if it didn't work, give it a try again. The phones are working. I've got several open phone lines right now, 888-8255. And of course, you Facebookers know how that part of the program works. And while you're on Facebook, there's absolutely nothing wrong with clicking on that share button. Don't be selfish. Share the good times that you have here on Tall Tales with your friends and acquaintances, and I'm sure they'll appreciate it. 888-8255. So we're going on to the next item on the agenda here, which is Ray Tenorio and Lou Leon Guerrero versus unborn children. And I got into this yesterday. I talked about legislative candidates discussed approaches to women's rights at the AAUW forum. AAUW means American Association of University Women. And one of the items on the list was the protection of reproductive rights is a topic that many women are concerned about nationally. Now, when you're talking about reproductive rights, that's a euphemism, and what it really means is a woman's ability to abort an unborn child. This, of course, is perhaps the most important issue of all to the social justice warriors. since 1973 support decision called Roe versus Wade, which even one of its proponents, the fabulous Ruth Bader Ginsburg, now recognizes was a mistake. But anyhow, it is it and Planned Parenthood versus Casey are very important as far as protection of reproductive rights. And we had a refresher course on this through the confirmation of Mr. Justice Brett Kavanaugh to the Supreme Court. And you remember I awarded a trophy to Mazie Hirono for really coming out and telling us what the Democrats really thought, which was, how can we believe someone who's not in favor of abortion? That's basically what Mazie said. So the only name identified as being in favor of abortion is Democrat Jermaine Alerta. And I'm a little disappointed that the story about women's rights didn't go a little farther with this and tell us who else is in favor or opposed to a woman's right to an abortion. So we talked about that yesterday. I mentioned that along the same lines, on Sunday, hundreds of people came out to participate in a Life Chain 2018 pro-life wave and rally sponsored by the Catholic Pro-Life Committee. The wave was held at 7 locations around the island to coincide with Respect Life Sunday, the first Sunday in October. So hundreds of people came out for that demonstration, and the AAUW, was on it. And I also said that I wondered, I think it's pretty clear. I don't think there's any doubt that Lou Leon Guerrero is pro-abortion. And I said, I wondered about Ray Tenorio. Well, I found an answer, but I'm going to talk with Heidi, and then I'm going to come back to that. Good afternoon, Heidi.
Hey, all I want to say is that it's not our choice. It's God's choice, Bob. And that's what people are failing to understand.
Okay, I think I know what you mean, but could you explain a little bit, Heidi?
Well, I feel that God is the one that makes, I know, not I feel, I know God makes the choice. So everybody goes around going, I'm pro-choice and I'm this and I'm that. No, God is in charge of our bodies, not me.
Okay.
That's where we need to start.
Okay, I understand, because so many people, I mentioned this yesterday when I referred to the A word. There's been little discussion of the A word in the campaign, and I explained that the A word is abortion, and that so many people who have strong feelings about it really don't like the sound of the word. And you're picking up on that, because the pro-abortion people want to tell you that they are pro-choice, right, Heidi?
Right. That's exactly right.
Yeah. So pro-choice is something that perhaps transcends a human's ability to exercise the way you see it, right, Heidi?
That's exactly right, Bob.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I can't say that.
So that's what I wanted to say.
Well, you did, and I'm really glad you called in.
And I could have been aborted, by the way, and you know my parents.
I do. Yeah.
I don't know if everybody knows this, but I could have been aborted.
Well, it would have been a loss for all of us, Heidi. Certainly all of those who know you and love you are certainly glad that didn't happen.
Maybe somewhat, but anyway. But this is the point. We have to get back to what God has ordained us. Not us. God. And they don't want to view God is in this whole equation. And that's very sad to me. That's very sad.
Okay, well, I got you, Heidi. Really thanks for calling and sharing that with us. That was Heidi, of course, and I'm glad she called in because there is this tendency to use euphemisms. As I said earlier, the word abortion is a strong word, and those who favor it, abortion on demand, don't like to use it. They would rather talk in terms of women's reproductive rights and being pro-choice and things like that. So before we talked with Heidi, I mentioned that I don't think that there's any doubt that Lulian Guerrero is pro-abortion. She testified on, I had a note here, she testified on a very pro-abortion bill here, 195-32. And anyhow, unless somebody wants to contradict me, I'm going to proceed on the basis that Lou is pro-abortion. So yesterday, I said, I wonder where Ray Tenorio is on this, because to me, it's really quiet out there concerning the A word, abortion, when you figure that there are hundreds of people standing out on the streets with signs. If you're a politician, what you're looking for is you want hundreds of people to vote for you. So if there is that mobilization of those people for that issue, one would think that one politician or some politician might come along and say, I'm anti-abortion. On the other hand, there are more women in the population than there are men. And, you know, the American Association of University Women thinks that women's reproductive rights are important, and they put that on their agenda. So I was wondering where Ray Tenorio came out on this, and as luck would have it, perhaps I was telepathic. Perhaps I was communicating with him telepathically, because that same afternoon he was interviewed by a reporter for the Daily News, or maybe that was, I guess that was on Sunday. He was interviewed by a reporter. I got the wrong story here. Now, KOAM, last night's news on KOAM. So maybe at the same time I was talking about it, this was actually happening. It was one of Ray's frequent appearances in the criminal justice system. And this time I think it was for fingerprinting. And after that, of course, whenever Ray goes near the courthouse or pretrial services at the probation division of the court or wherever, there's going to be a reporter there that sticks a microphone in his face and asks him questions. And in this story on KOAM, Ray said, I hope people understand that I'm here to protect the people of Guam, protect the unborn, protect foster families, provide for the common man, look out for making sure the conflict of interest that I don't have are not something that my opponent will acknowledge, etc. So I'm going to repeat the key word here. I hope people understand that I'm here to protect the people of Guam, protect the unborn. So if Ray says that he's going to protect the unborn, that suggests to me that Ray is anti-abortion. So if that's the case, Ray...
do you mean pro-life?
Say again?
Do you mean pro-life or anti-abortion? Is it the same thing?
Well, see, even
I'm sorry.
Yeah. The real Joe Cruz says, is anti-abortion the same thing as pro-life? And of course it is. And there we go with the euphemisms, right? People don't like to use that word abortion. So the pro-abortion folks grabbed, well, I'm pro-choice. A woman needs to have a choice. And the anti-abortion folks say, I'm pro-life. I think that you know, that we shouldn't take the life of the unborn. But of course, the fact that you got just a tad confused there, Real Joe Cruz, shows the genius of controlling vocabulary. Because by controlling vocabulary, a group is able to control the thought process. It's very Orwellian, but that's kind of the way it works. You know, the sin becomes virtue, and bad becomes good, and on and on and on. So anyhow, Ray Tenorio is anti-abortion, or as the Real Joe Cruz would say, Ray Tenorio is pro-life. So, Ray, just an unsolicited tip for you in your campaign. Some of the things that you have done in your campaign haven't worked out very well for you, like the one where you grabbed the cop's gun. I don't think that appealed very much to the law enforcement voters out in the public, or the law-abiding folks out in the public. And that one where you went to the Philippines to see if you could recruit some support there. I'll go on with this in a second, but I got John on the line. Afternoon, John.
Afternoon, Uncle Bob. This is John Dunca.
John Dunca, wow, a Tall Tales Life member.
You know, I've been out on a crusade, but I'm back.
Okay, well, welcome back to Tall Tales, John.
Well, hey, listen, I know you were talking about abortion and the word abortion and, you know, pro-choice and everything. You were talking about the vocabulary of it all. I was wondering if you would know if there was a Chamorro word for abortion.
Senior Lilo titungo na palabra ko tungo.
Ekwadelo ma sinanawa sangonizo puno ipatgun. Hapuno, which
kill
Chamorro life.
Hapuno ipatgun, kill the baby.
Kill the child. They killed the child.
Yeah.
You know, so I don't know that there is, and I don't know that there's any writings anywhere in, you know, Guam history that shows that the Chamorros were had any type of abortive mechanism in place in the society. You know, there was nothing ever written about it, so I don't know if it even existed because there's not even a word for it.
Well, and that may very well be the answer to the question because, you know, if you study linguistic theory, usually the word comes before the thought, before the action. So if you have an example, you know, kung tungo no haftay mano masangan I palabra and refrigerator, gifino tomorrow, John?
Con ice.
Icebox.
Oh, no, con ice.
Pet icebox, because, you know, there weren't any till someone brought them over. So we just, because we didn't have the word, we adopted that word. So, Zangin tada palabra para abortion, gifino tomorrow? Senior night?
You know, my mom told me that there is no word, but if there was going to be a word, it would probably be what she said, which meant kill the child.
Sure.
So, but just like there's no tomorrow word for space shuttle, you know, I mean, we borrow that all the time. So I would submit that based on what my mom was telling me and what she taught me, and based on all of the writings about, ancient Chamorros and all of their social, and what they've done based on what other people have written, there's no evidence that abortion was any part of Chamorro society because there's not even a word for it.
Well, John, I'm so glad you called in and brought that to my attention. And you know, the teachable moment here is that Chamorros had it right until something came along and they had to engage in what's called circumlocution. Oftentimes when a language is faced with a word that doesn't exist in that language, they'll borrow a word from another language. For English, it's Greek or Latin quite often. or they'll engage in circumlocution. For instance, I understand the word for television in German, if translated literally, comes out to long-distance picture transmission. So mapuno a potgun, you know, and the nice thing about it is just more honest than saying something like ga linatla or, you know, something like that. So, John, I'm so glad to have you back on Tall Tales.
Absolutely. You know, I heard that you were on, on 93.3, and I said, hey, you got to go check that out. So there you are, and I'm always up for some good advice from my Uncle Bob, some good sage advice, you know, and based on, you know, and it's always based on, you know, your experience. So you have a whole lot more experience than I do, and I'm always looking forward to listening to you.
Well, thanks a lot for calling, John.
All right, Uncle Bob, you take care. As always, you know, you take care of Auntie and be good to her, all right?
Oh, of course. Without any direction, I'll do that.
All right, you bet.
So long, John. An interesting call. Taza na palabra ang gifino tomorrow para abortion. So, okay. So, let me see if I got any comments on Facebook here that I need to pick up on that particular subject. Jose, Lou has a public record of denying the right to life for the unborn on Guam and those born despite an attempt to terminate their life via elective abortion. In 2013, Lou Leon Guerrero testified against the Born Alive Act. So if we're talking women's reproductive rights, perhaps I'm campaigning for Lou, because now you know Lou is in favor of abortion. Jose goes on to say, pro-choice limits choice to only a select few. Pro-choice, as you were, pro-life, is for everybody. And Jose goes on, pro-life from conception to natural death. So interesting comments, and Linda Gabriel agrees. So good comments, Jose. So, see, I got a call coming in here, right, Real Joe Cruz? Maybe not. Okay. If it's a call on the subject of abortion, I don't want to start out on DFS versus Lotte. Should I just go ahead and pick up the call, Real Joe? Hold on. Okay. Sometimes people call, and I guess it's Real Joe's sterling personality. They'd rather talk to the Real Joe Cruz than to talk to our international radio listening audience. So perhaps the Real Joe Cruz, when he finishes his gig as a producer here on Tall Tales, may get into selling automobiles with his charming personality, right, Real Joe?
Yes, sir.
What was that all about, Real Joe?
A gentleman asking about a case that's going to happen in Berkeley pretty soon.
I see.
Where versus somebody, or he was just rambling on and on. I couldn't quite hear everything he was saying, though.
Just rambling on.
And then I asked him if he wanted to go on the air, but he didn't want to.
Okay, well, if he's just rambling on and on, tell him that we got
perfect place for you.
Well, we got Bob to do that. We don't need anybody to call in. I'm perfectly capable of doing that myself. So DFS versus Lotte. Former Calvo staffer says fix was in for Lotte. And I'll come back to that after the seventh inning stretch that we all know and love so well.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training every morning on The Ray Gibson Show.
No doubt you've heard these words. Life just ain't fair. We all have had things or people go south on us, leaving us feel that we were victimized. I'm Jerry Roberts, and at 7:20 a.m. on The Ray Gibson Show, I've got a story you might not soon forget.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point by Jerry Roberts at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts on The Ray Gibson Show on 93.3 The Point.
Yeah, I think I explained yesterday how sometimes those long hits to center field, the ball gets stuck in the ivy, right, real Joe Cruz?
Yeah, they have to dig it out.
Uh-huh. And if that happens, what is the call?
It's a double, right?
It's a ground rule double. Yeah. Okay. It doesn't happen in any other ballpark because no other ballpark has ivy growing on the outfield wall, I think. Okay, so DFS versus Lotte. This is a continuing saga. You know that DFS had the airport duty-free contract for like 40 years, and then Lotte displaced them back in about 2013, and since that time it's been kind of full employment for a couple of law firms. A lot of litigation, complex litigation, etc. One of the late-breaking items was a gentleman named S.K. Lee, who worked for Lotte in Korea, allegedly sat down with high officials from duty-free shoppers from DFS and shared some of Lotte's secret information with the DFS executives. And for that, he's being prosecuted in Korea. The DFS folks denied it, but one of the articles I read said that some emails in DFS's cache pretty much indicated that there had been communication with S.K. Lee. So that's one of the things that's going on here. And then coming from the other side here, that part of it was kind of bad news for DFS, but then for Lotte, Ray Topaznia said he was interviewed for the executive manager position at the airport soon after Eddie Calvo was elected governor in 2010. The airport spent a lot of money sending me to school to become a certified airport manager, Topaznia said. Among the questions, he said he received a certification, etc. Among the questions, Topaznia said he was asked during an interview for the airport job was, quote, would I support the removal of DFS being replaced by Lotte duty-free? Keep in mind, the bid has not even been put out, said Topaznia. It was all orchestrated. It was all predetermined. So what he's saying is that when he interviewed to be hired as a job airport manager, he doesn't tell us who interviewed him, but somebody said, how would you think, what do you think about Lotte replacing DFS? Topaznia said his response to the question was absolutely not, and he did not get the job. It eventually went to Chuck Atta, who remains GIAA executive manager. Then Topaznia was hired as a deputy director at Gura,
and then he was a special assistant to the governor assigned to the Guam Regional Transit Authority. And I have the article has a GIA response from the GIA, Airport Attorney Genevieve Rapatis. There's absolutely no evidence that the fix was in for Lotte from the beginning. She refuted Topaznia's allegation, saying there is no evidence to support his claim. The contract award was decided by 4 independent managers at the airport. The DFS bid was rated 3rd out of the 4 bids submitted, said Rapatis, and none of the allegations that DFS had made affected the evaluation of that award. We have done extensive discovery in this case, she said, and DFS has been unable to tie any of the allegations they have made to any of the evaluators. The airport awarded a $154 million retail concession contract to Lotte in April of 2013. In February of this year, DFS won a decision from Judge Barcenas voiding the contract. However, Barcenas agreed to place his decision on hold while GIA appeals in the Supreme Court. Now, after more than 5 years of civil litigation, the AG has launched a criminal investigation. Subpoenas were sent in August to the airport manager Chuck Atta, Joe Camacho, former executive of DFS, Attorney Patrick Seville for DFS, and Lotte attorney Caesar Cabot to produce certain documents. The subpoenas are signed by Joseph McDonald, Deputy Attorney General and Chief Prosecutor. Topaznia said McDonald has interviewed him about the concession contract. He declined to discuss the details of that interview and declined to say who he thinks the prosecutors are targeting in their investigation. This is a really, really important story. It's a classic, really, really big story. When it all unfolds, it might be the kind of story that you see in one of the TV news magazines like 2020 or Dateline or something like that. It's an extremely big story. And of course, as is our custom, we will be on it like a duck on a June bug. And every time something happens, we will bring it to your attention and attempt to give it some context and comment on it if that's appropriate. So that's the latest episode in DFS versus Lotte. The next item on my card here, and this is almost propitious because my old friend John, a life member of Tall Tales, called for the first time since I've become the top-rated afternoon FM radio talk show here in the Western Pacific. It's the first time John has called. And the next item is something that I know he will be interested in. The next item is Chamorro versus Chamorro. And the real Joe Cruz has been scratching his head about that one for a long time, especially when I tell him that the winner of that particular bout was Chamorro. So I'm going to explain a little bit. The thing that brings this up is the Chamorro Language Commission explains changes to orthography. That was a story in the Post on the 7th of October. And then in the Sunday Daily News, there was an article by Robert Underwood, which says, is a candidate's Chamorro language skills important for today's voters? So I plan on commenting on both of those. But here is the key to the card. Chamorro can be spelled Chamorro, and I'm going to attach a label to that. Spanish, Okay? Spanish. That's the Spanish spelling. Or it can be spelled capital C, capital H, O, M, O, R, U. And I'm going to call that modern. And I will also, as a shorthand rendition of this, I will refer to the Spanish spelling as O, the modern spelling as U. You got that, Real Joe Cruz?
O and U.
O and U, yeah, okay. So the winner here, I'm going to announce the winner before we even go through the particulars of the fight. The winner here is O, the Spanish spelling, O, not the modern spelling, U. And by way of explanation, you don't have to be around very long to listen to folks who are interested in the Chamorro language decry the fact that not as many people are using it as would be desirable. Awful lot of young folks, Chamorro, ne? Gee. And so there are some interested folks who think that we ought to do as much as we can to increase the usage of the Chamorro language. Some people feel so strong about it that it's in the school curriculum, and we force kids to learn Chamorro whether they want to or not, whether they're interested or not. It's part of the curriculum. So the old spelling, the O, Chamorro, and this article here on orthography, I think, gets into this, if I could find the right place. The Chamorro language was originally written using Spanish language conventions. Okay, well, that's pretty understandable because pre-Hispanic times there wasn't a writing system to reduce Chamorro to writing. This is according to Robert Underwood. The Chamorro language was originally written using Spanish language conventions, according to Robert Underwood, commission member of the Chamorro Language Commission and former chairman. He said Hafa, which means what in Chamorro, would be written instead of with an H, with a J, and frijoles, which means green beans, would be written with a J instead of an H. In other words, instead of Friholes, it would be written Frijoles. It wasn't until the 1970s when Guam educators Donald Topping and Benedita Dunca conducted a linguistic study of the structure of Chamorro language that a more accurate spelling system was developed. That project really indicated the complexity of Chamorro in a different way. The new system was called the Marianas orthography and continues to be much the same orthography Guam follows today and looks more like English than Spanish. The former University of Guam president added that another misguided effort, by the Chamorro Language Commission in the 1970s, which he was a part of, adopted a slightly different orthography under the guidance of a Philippine-based educator. He said that orthography had aspects of the Filipino language, Tagalog. The Chamorro word tai-tai, which means read, would be and spelled T-A-I-T-A-I, would be spelled T-A-Y-T-A-Y, he said as an example. That orthography didn't sit well with the Chamorro population at the time, he said, and so the former orthography was reinstated. And then the rest of then he goes on from there. One example of the new addition to newly adopted Chamorro orthography is the capitalization of singular CH, singular Chamorro letters such as CH, as seen in Chetlu, which means sibling, or NG, as seen in Ngenge, which means to smell, but only at the beginning of sentences. The official orthography also says to refer to place names that are of Chamorro origin in Chamorro spelling, such as Inalahan for Inarahan, Litektan for Ritidian, and Hagat for agate. On public approval and regular usage of the orthography, Underwood said, eventually it takes time. It's not going to be adopted immediately, but it will over time. When they changed Aganya to Hagatnya in the mid-1990s, a lot of people predicted that would be a disaster. Everybody gave every argument as to why we should keep Aganya. Then after a couple of years, okay, it's Hagatnya, and that's that. There's always going to be someone out there who's going to predict some kind of gloom or disaster. It's probably going to be me this time, as if it's too outside the box, but it isn't. The Commission has hopes of developing an online website and dictionary, children's Pictionary, and even a Chamorro spell check in the future. For more information, etc., contact the Commission at commissionchamorro@gmail.com. And the URL is spelled in the new orthography, so you probably aren't going to be able to find it. So this is the point I want to make. Learning a language is never easy. I've done a little bit of it myself. Yo intento español, pero un poco nomás. Utungo fino Chamorro di dia lo utsagi. But I never learned English. Would you believe that, Real Joe Cruz? I never learned English.
Amazing.
Yeah, I never did. And the reason I say that is because I got it for nothing. It's my mother tongue. I grew up with it. I never learned it. It was just there. The way people of a certain generation never learned Chamorro. They learned it as their mother tongue. But if you were to try to learn a language that's not your mother tongue, it's not easy. And the older you are, the harder it is. And I've read that, before you're 11 or 12, you're pretty malleable, and it's not that hard to learn a language. But when you get it up in years a little bit, it's much harder. So if it's already hard to learn a language, who are we helping when we throw a brand new orthography at those who are trying to learn, especially when the orthography is unfamiliar and it looks like it's going to be our Carl, huh? He's got a wonderful sense of timing, doesn't he? So our Carl will hang on to you until the seventh inning, as you were, till the last call, and we can use either English or Chamorro. Mashafa Malagomune. So we'll take a short break.
Calvo started with a simple handshake. As we celebrate 80 years, we extend a hand to all of you who have taken our hand in trust, to the dreamers and realists, the families, the businesses, the young at heart and the old souls, our manumku and our children. From all of us to all of you, our deepest, happiest, and infinite thanks.
80 years here for you. 80 years thanks to you. Calvo's Insurance, a legacy of trust.
Pues okay, y último agang, huh? So, Carl, what can you tell me?
Bob, I'm
Chamorro. I grew up on Guam, but you put me to shame. You really do. I'm just chiming in about the Chamorro language. You know, my mom is Chamorro, and I really feel that I was deprived because she didn't incorporate that into our daily routine as I was growing up. And that is as you were pointing out, the easiest time for kids to learn a language. You can actually learn 2 or 3 languages. You learn 2 mother tongues if in case it's a mixed marriage. And then, you know, in the household, and then when you're away, of course, you learn English. And you're always practicing English, so you don't even need to think about that. But I've got cousins, one family, there are about 8 kids. The mom and dad are both Chamorro. They're both passed away, but none of them speak Chamorro, except I think one of them speaks some very basic Chamorro. But, you know, it's really our loss that it wasn't expressed at home, because that is the way to save the language to me. Forcing Chuukese kids and Filipino kids and other kids that aren't Chamorro to take Chamorro is not going to do any good. And once the class is over, I've taken a foreign language. I can barely think of 2 sentences. You know, this was decades ago, but I mean, it fades very quickly. And to me, the rescue of the language has to come at the home. Nana or Tata or Mom or Dad has to be speaking it, and you know, someone's got to be designated. You know, you're going to keep the mother tongue alive. Anyone that speaks to Grandma or Grandpa, you speak in Chamorro, or you speak in Tagalog, you know, or you speak in whatever. And that's really the way, to me, just my personal opinion, that's really the way to save the language.
I guess you weren't listening to Tall Tales on that day when I explained the Tall Tales method of not inculcating, but encouraging the use of Chamorro. Probably not,
Well,
huh?
I missed that. I'm sorry to say. I was, you know, not here for class.
Yeah.
What was your method?
And in those days, we didn't have the luxury of being able to go back at yesterday, look at yesterday's Facebook, and pick up what you missed, right?
Yeah.
That's the beauty of being over here on the point. That if you're late for school or if you miss a class, you can always go to yesterday's Facebook and pick up on what you missed out on.
Very true.
Well, my method. I don't know if I got enough time, but I'll at least start on it. My method would take advantage of those in our community who already can speak Chamorro, and the numbers are decreasing. It's pretty hard to find anybody under 40 that can speak Chamorro anymore. And I think we're going to run into the point where we're going to have a hard time finding people to teach Chamorro in school, because I don't think we could take someone who doesn't speak Chamorro and send him through our program and wind up with a Chamorro teacher when we're done, the way we do it in the States with Spanish. You know, Betty O'Brien taught Spanish in my high school, and I think she'd been to Tijuana a couple of times, but that was pretty much her real-life experience. She learned Spanish in school, and she was a Spanish teacher, and you could learn Spanish from her, and it worked out. But I don't think we're at that point here. So what we need to do is we need to find people who can speak Chamorro, get them to volunteer to go through a very short course as to how to do a rudimentary lesson in Chamorro for anyone, and using the same technique, the oral technique that TESOL teachers use. I could explain that to you sometime. It's all sounds, and it's repetition. So you could teach someone that, and that person would be armed with some key phrases and would wear some kind of an identifying pin or badge or something like that. Because I can tell you that if you don't speak Chamorro and you don't look like you're Chamorro, like you're a foot taller than everybody else, for example, it's hard to find people who will you can actually speak Chamorro too, because they'll figure, English, boy, usa Fino English. So if people would wear those badges and those who wanted to learn knew that there would be a friendly conversational partner, they could approach that person and get a little on-the-spot learning right there. I think this would be far more effective than forcing it down kids' throats in school, which, as far as I can tell, has not worked at all. So if we had some people who would volunteer to do that, some of the mature folks in our neighborhood, I think we could go a long way with it. The other part of it would be to, I don't think the Chamorro Language Commission is a good idea at all. I'm really not very up on commissions here, as you might have guessed, Carl. But I think getting it out of the hands of the government would be the way to go. And some nonprofit group needs to get together with some public relations type to figure out how to make speaking Chamorro cool. Because if young folks thought it was cool to speak Chamorro, you couldn't stop them from learning it. But if it's one of those, oh, shucks, we got to study it in school, it has the opposite effect. I'll give you an example. When I was a kid, the last thing that you'd ever see was people driving around in cars that had Chinese characters painted on their car. I see it all the time now, and the reason isn't because we have some great affinity for China. It's because kids think it's cool. So if we could convince young folks that it's cool to speak Chamorro, I think we could go somewhere. The problem, Carl, with using it at home is an awful lot of people in the parent generation now don't speak Chamorro either. And the demographics are that if something fairly dramatic isn't done fairly soon, we're going to run out of folks who speak Chamorro who would be able to do any provocation at all. So that's the Tall Tales plan. You can hold the applause. I guess you're free to applaud now since I've pretty much given you the short course.
I'm applauding, and I agree with you. There's tens of thousands of people that do speak Chamorro in Guam, and most of them have never taken a single class. It happened in the home, and to me, I think. If there was maybe more foresight, there could have been more of selling of the idea to families, maybe 2 or 3 decades ago, that, how important this is, and like you were saying, a way to make it
it never
a fashionable thing to do.
It never works that way, though, Carl. My grandmother could speak Danish because she was I don't remember first or second generation. That part of the family came from Denmark in 1890. My grandma could speak Danish. My oldest uncle could speak some Danish. The only thing I know about Danish is it goes good with coffee, right? And there was absolutely no desire for anybody. We thought Grandma was kind of funny when she would reel off a Danish phrase, and that was about it. And it kind of always works that way. It's the old thing that you really don't miss something until you realize you're about to lose it, and oftentimes it's too late by that time. And the other part of the Tall Tales plan would be to toss the U orthography in the trash and stick strictly with the Spanish orthography. And I might go back and pick this up a little bit tomorrow because I have a feeling that if I do, I'll provoke another call from John. So, Carl, I always appreciate it when you call in and help me finish up the show here.
Well, I appreciate you always taking my call. You haven't turned me away so far. I always learn something new when I'm listening to you in the background. So it's been very good, very good. A lot of good shows. I've learned quite a lot.
Okay, we'll see you tomorrow then, Carl.
All right. Talk to you later.
That was our Carl. So, manhada na I Tall Tales para pago no mga malefa Tall Tales agupa na Hasta Gupa, adios.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Bracing for a hurricane. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. States of emergency declared in Alabama and in 35